Here at TFL, we love to talk about real-world testing, and trust me, what I'm doing today, it doesn't get any more real-world than this. So I have a big pile of interlocking bricks which have to be moved. I had a plan for them, but it's not gonna work out. So I have enough bricks that we could overload this truck today, but that's not the plan. We're gonna take this F-150 right up to max payload. We're gonna do a fuel economy comparison, empty versus loaded, and I will let you know how this truck handles when it is fully loaded down. Okay, we just pulled into the gas station here for our empty fuel economy test, so let's fill up and let's see how the truck does. Now, it probably goes without saying, but we're gonna drive this exact same loop once this truck is loaded up. So right now, we're going north on a nice paved highway, and I have the cruise control set at 90 kilometers an hour, and I plan to keep it there for as long as I possibly can. Now we're gonna go north for about 50K, turn around, and when we come back south, we're gonna do it on some secondary roads and some gravel roads, so a little bit slower speed and more stopping and starting. Then we'll load the bricks up and do it all over again, see what the fuel economy looks like. So here are the totals. We did 11 liters per 100 kilometers over 93K. Now we can switch the units up for all the US folks. We go to display, units, miles and gallons. And now let's go see how we did. 21.3 mpg over 57.8 miles. Now let's fill it up and do the math ourselves. Okay, so let's do the math here. You take 11.413, which is the liters we used, and you divide that by the distance traveled, which is 93 kilometers even, divided by 93, and then you multiply by 100 to move the decimal point over, and we come up with 12.27 liters per 100. So, you know, actually 1 whole liter per 100 worse than what the computer told us we were getting. And now it'll be really interesting to load up this truck and see how it does with that payload on. Let's do it. First of all, what is that payload rating? Well, we can go to the door jam sticker here and we can see it. 1,342 pounds. And then up here, we can also figure out which axle we have. You see there it says it's an L9 axle. So there's the pile of bricks. You can see this pile's been here so long, it's a little bit overgrown. And we're gonna load them up into this pallet, which has this cage on it, just to kind of keep everything nice and tidy in the back of the truck. Now, first order of business is to go find out what these bricks weigh. All right, let's weigh up these bricks. So I'm just using my bathroom scale here, but it should be fairly close. So we get 4 bricks on here, and that brings us to a total of 24.2 pounds, which is essentially 6 pounds a brick. Now let's see if I back them off here, if the scale's sensitive enough. No, that's too little of a load. Okay, so 24 pounds for 4 bricks. Like I said, essentially 6 pounds per brick. So we're also gonna do a squat test here before we load those bricks up. So let's measure where this sits at. And it's basically 39 1/4 inches. Exactly 39 1/4 actually. So now let's load it up with those bricks and see how much it squats. So to take this truck right up to max payload, we essentially need 1,000 pounds of bricks here in the bed. Now doing the math, that is 166 bricks. Now, just to keep things even, we're gonna do 160 bricks into the back of this truck, which will be just shy of that 1,000 pounds. But then once you add my weight, the weight of this skid, and the bit of gear I have in the truck, will basically be right there at the payload limit. And it's just me here today, so let's get loading. This is brick number 100. We're getting there. And here it is, the final brick. This is brick number 160. Okay, we got our bricks back there, nearly 1,000 pounds. Now let's see how much this truck squats. Oh wow. It's been brought down to 37 inches, and to remind you, it was at 39 1/4, so essentially 2 1/4 inches of squat, and even just, you know, feeling it, oh yeah, you can feel that it's really loaded. There's not a lot of suspension here left. I'm really curious to get out there and drive and see how she feels. Okay, so we just pulled back into the gas station. Now we're loaded up. We're gonna fill up, and then we're gonna go run that exact same route that we ran this morning when the truck was empty, and we'll compare the fuel economy. Let's do it. Okay, so we're filled up and we are just pulling out onto the road right now. We are gonna go drive the exact same loop that we did this morning. It was 93 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. So we're gonna try to replicate it perfectly with 1,000 pounds of bricks in the back, and we'll see how the fuel economy does. So this morning we managed 11 liters per 100 kilometers empty on that fuel economy loop. In Canada, this truck we're in here, this is an F-150 with a 2.7 liter EcoBoost and 4-wheel drive. This truck is rated at 11.3 liters per 100 combined. So we actually beat the rating by 0.3, whereas in the States, this truck is rated at 21 miles per gallon combined, and we managed 21.3, so we beat the MPG rating also by 0.3. So essentially, this truck got exactly what the government agencies say it should get. So now the question is, 1,000 pounds of bricks in the back, exact same loop, how's it gonna shake down? I'm really curious to find out if we burn more fuel. Now, I honestly don't know what the results of this test are gonna be. I've done a lot of payload testing in the past, including payload testing with fuel economy, and we've actually found that occasionally some payload can help your fuel economy. And I'm not sure if that's because of aerodynamics or if it's just because most drivers adjust their driving style sort of naturally once they have payload in the back. But like I said, I'm really curious to see how this ends up. And just like this morning, we're back on this highway here, so we're gonna set the cruise control and we're gonna stick it at 90 kilometers an hour and we head north. So initial driving impressions with the weight in the back. Well, first of all, when it comes to power, this little EcoBoost has a ton of it. It's 325 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. Now, it is a turbocharged V6, and the turbo is definitely pronounced. You know, you feel the turbo power come on. You can hear the turbochargers as well. But putting this weight in the back, it really didn't make all that much of a difference. Off the line, the truck feels slightly slower, but it absolutely has enough power to totally control this weight. Easily the biggest difference now that the weight is on there are the brakes. So every time I come to a stop, I feel like I have to really dig into the pedal to get this thing to stop. And now that the weight's on there, the brake pedal does feel a little bit too spongy for my liking. So what about dynamically? Well, the truck absolutely leans more through corners, and it definitely kind of likes to push wide now because you can feel the weight back there. But considering the fact that we're at max payload, or you know, within a few pounds of it, plus or minus, I think this truck is doing stupendous, actually. I was expecting it to be much more taxed and for the suspension to be sort of right at the end of its travel, but you know, it actually has become a more comfortable ride now. The weight back there is really smoothed out the back end, but I haven't been able to find the limit yet. I haven't bottomed it out. I haven't hit the point where the suspension starts to feel stiff again, and that's really a credit to this truck. I'm pushing it to max payload, and it actually stays fairly comfortable and easy to drive. Another note I want to make real quick is just about towing and payload and making sure you know your numbers. So as you saw this morning, you can always check your door jam if you want to find out what your payload rating is. And the reason why that's so important is because an F-150 with the 2.7 liter EcoBoost can have a maximum payload rating of 2,470 pounds. That's an extra 1,000 pounds compared to what our truck here is rated at. And the thing is, when Ford runs commercials and ads, they don't talk about most of their trucks, which can do about 1,300 pounds like this one. They talk about that weird, you know, 4x2 regular cab work truck that can do 2,470. So before you believe all the numbers that they love to advertise, make sure you do the research on the vehicle that you are buying specifically, because everything makes a difference here. The tires, the wheels, the trim package you choose, the accessories you put on, everything makes a difference when it comes to payload. The second you add weight to the truck, it comes off your payload rating. So basically, just do your research. Make sure you look into your truck, your vehicle. Don't just believe the best in class stuff. So this morning for that empty loop, I did not engage tow haul mode. So I've decided that for this loaded loop, I'm also not going to put tow haul on. And tow haul actually probably would have made my fuel economy a bit worse because it likes to hold gears a little bit longer. So therefore you're running at higher revs for longer periods of time. But the funny thing is, I haven't needed tow haul even a little bit, to be honest. The power from this EcoBoost is just overwhelming for this load. It has no issue moving it, and I've never felt like, you know, it's shifting too early or not giving me the power that I want. So that quick access to power here is also in thanks to the 10-speed automatic transmission that was added here for 2018. Now, this transmission has really been spread over a number of different vehicles. The F-150 has it on almost all of its engines. The Silverado and Sierra over at GM have now adopted it. It's in the Camaro. It's really spread out. Ford and GM co-developed this transmission. And so far, I haven't driven it in a package where I don't like it. It just always knows where it wants to be. It doesn't hunt. That's the biggest thing everyone's always worried about with high gear transmissions, but there's really no hunting here. And I've said this many times in a number of different reviews, but I'll say it again. My favorite thing is how smooth the shifts are, especially when it's downshifting from cruising speed to really get into the power. So, you know, you're out here cruising on the highway and, you know, at 9th or 10th, you lay your foot into it, this transmission, boom, it bangs into 5th or 4th or whatever gear it decides you want, and there's the power almost instantly. And you can watch all the shifts happening with this 10-speed, but not feel them. The shifts are imperceptible. It's a really smooth transmission, and the power's there when you want it. And there's been fuel economy gains. You know, it added to the fuel economy, so it's hard to complain about this powertrain package. I also really like how Ford allows you to control the transmission. So there's a plus-minus button on the side of the shifter, and it actually allows you to lock out gears from the top down. So starting from 10th, you can bring it to 9, 8, 7, 6th, and if you leave it at 6, it will essentially become a 6-speed transmission. So if for some reason at the top end, if you want to make sure you still have the power to keep the revs high, you can just lock out those top gears. And I like that way of doing it. You know, it allows you to have the control over the transmission if you want to just downshift, but if you just want to take away some of those top gears for whatever reason, you can do that too, and I think that's a pretty clever way of going about it. So what is on this truck to help save fuel economy? Well, I already talked about the 10-speed automatic. The other system really is stop-start. Every single F-150 adopted stop-start, and I will say I just had a diesel that had the stop-start, the 3-liter diesel, and the 3-liter, the stop-start's very pronounced. You hear that engine every time it shuts off and turns back on. This 2.7 is the exact opposite of that. It's a very smooth restart. You don't really feel it. You hear it just a tiny bit. And yeah, you know what? It doesn't really get in the way. So in the diesel, I found myself turning the stop-start off because when you hear it, when it pronounces itself, it gets a little annoying. But here in the 2.7, it's essentially imperceptible, and I've just kept it on because it doesn't get in the way. Alrighty, the loaded loop is done, and we're pulling back into the gas station right now, and we will fill up and figure out our fuel economy. First up, here's the totals. 12.2 liters per 100. So essentially 1 liter worse, actually 1.2 liters per 100 worse than when the truck was empty. Now we did a tiny bit more distance on that run because I did miss a turn at one point. Let's go check out what that is for our US folks. So advanced, display, units, miles and gallons. So that comes out to 19.2 miles per gallon. And 60.5 miles. And once again, that's essentially 1 mile per gallon worse than when the truck was empty. Now let's do the math ourselves and see what that says. Okay, let's see how it did. Boom, there's the first click. Now we wait 30 seconds and we go again till it clicks. All right, that's 30. Boom. Okay, let's do the math. So you take 14.162 liters and then you divide it by our total distance, which is 97.5 kilometers. And then you multiply that by 100 to move the decimal. And we actually come up with 14.5 liters per 100, which is actually 2 liters per 100 worse than what the computer said. It is safe to say that this is not scientific, so the truth is probably sort of somewhere between these two numbers, but that gives you a good sense, you know, at least 1 mile per gallon, maybe 2 or 3 once you add something like 1,000 pounds of payload into your bed. So this F-150 handled the weight really nicely. I was impressed. And what's maybe even cooler is that it didn't take a massive fuel economy hit when we loaded this weight, just about 1 to 2 miles per gallon or liters per 100. Oh, and if you're worried about this 2.7 EcoBoost not having enough power, well, don't be. It has a ton of torque. As always, guys, make sure you hit subscribe, come back here to TFL Truck for the latest news, views, and real-world reviews. See ya.